study was a phony study put out by the VA. You may want to talk about that. I mean, we could talk about that if anybody wants to, and maybe I'd ask Alex to talk about then. If you would introduce our great talented head of the VA and let him say a couple of words. But that was a phony study, and it's very dangerous to do it. The fact is, people should want to help people, not to make political points. It's really sad when they do that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so hydroxychloroquine has been approved by the FDA for decades here in the United States for the treatment of malaria. So hydroxychloroquine has been approved by the FDA. So hydroxychloroquine we have here in the United States by the FDA. So hydroxychloroquine we have here in the United States by the FDA. So hydroxychloroquine we have here in the United States by the FDA. So hydroxychloroquine we have here in the United States by the FDA. So hydroxychloroquine we have here in the United States by the FDA. So hydroxychloroquine we have here in the United States by the FDA. So hydroxychloroquine we have here in the United States used in the judgment of a physician in consultation with their patient. As the President said, and I'll ask Secretary Wilkie to talk a bit about the VA study, there's been some studies around the use of hydroxychloroquine later in disease progression, but we are still working on some controlled studies earlier in the disease progression to see if we can measure the effectiveness of it in preventing the replication of the virus and spread in mild to moderate cases rather than the more serious, and that data is still pending.
And it's got, well, it's gotten very good reviews, very good from many, many doctors, many doctors. Secretary, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to clear up something that the media has not reported accurately. That was not a VA study.
Can you hear him? Because I think it's important. You asked the question.
Yeah, that was
you
not.
Want to listen? Because I don't even think you're listening.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Why don't you listen to him?
That was not a VA study. Researchers took VA numbers, and they did not clinically review them. They were not peer reviewed. They did not even look at what the President just mentioned. They did not. They did not even comorbidities that mentioned patients. They did not even comorbidities that study mentioned patients. They did not even comorbidities. I also mentioned patients. They did not even comorbidities. The instructions I received from the President were very clear. The instructions I received and protect life. Very clear. Those of us who've had a military life, some of us around this table, we've been taking this drug for years. As the President mentioned, the Department of Defense and VA have been using it for 65 years. On any given day, VA uses 42,000 doses of this drug. And what we did when this virus first hit us was to use every means necessary to help preserve life. We believed that the Congress was right, and the President signed legislation to protect life, the right to try. And we did this in consultation not only with the families of those veterans, but we did this in consultation with our doctors under FDA guidelines. So I want to knock down the phony story that this is somehow the VA going back on what the President told us to do, which was to use every means possible to protect and preserve the lives of our veterans. And I think, as the President mentioned, we've seen in many cases across this country. In fact, I was on the news the day that the Governor of New York was asking you for tens of thousands of doses.
That's right.
We are doing everything we can to protect the lives of our veterans. And this is one of the means that we used.
Thank you. Hydroxychloroquine is used by thousands and thousands of frontline workers so that hopefully they don't catch this horrible disease or whatever you want to call it. It is a terrible virus. It's a terrible thing. And a lot of people are taking it. A lot of doctors are taking it. A lot of people swear by it. It's gotten a bad reputation only because I'm promoting it. So I'm obviously a very bad promoter. If anybody else were promoting it, they'd say this is the greatest thing ever, but because of me. So a lot of doctors swear by it. I think we can say that, Mr. Secretary. A lot of doctors think it's great. But the one thing that is true, one way or the other, whether you like it or not, it's been around for 70 years. Unbelievably effective for malaria and for lupus, and probably effective for arthritis. And what has been determined is it doesn't harm you. It's a very powerful drug, I guess, but it doesn't harm you. And so I thought, as a frontline defense, possibly it would be good. And I've had no impact from it. I feel the same. I haven't changed. I don't think too much. And at some point, I won't take it. Might be soon, might be a little bit. It doesn't seem to have any impact on me, but it seems to be a extra line of defense, and it's gotten tremendous reviews from some people, including many, many doctors all over the world. And you should look at some of the studies. They've been amazing, some of the studies. But that's up to people, and it's up, I think, strongly recommend to people with their doctor's advice and acknowledgement. Okay? Okay.
Cabinet taking that regimen, Mr. President?
Say it?
Is anyone else in your cabinet taking?
I don't know.
particular-
I don't know. That's a personal thing as to whether or not they want to answer that question. But I think many of them would take it if they felt it was necessary. I also had a case where we had somebody fairly close to me, very nice young gentleman. He tested positive. And he tested positive. Plus, I deal with Mike a lot, and Mike had somebody very close to him who I also see who tested positive. So I thought, from my standpoint, not a bad time to take it, because we had the combination, the two people. It's two people in a very big building with a lot of people working. But so I thought it would be appropriate, but it has had no impact in terms of me. Okay? Any other question, please?
Mr. President?
Yes. Go ahead. Do you want to go? Go ahead.
I just want to ask you a question on Brazil.
Brazil.
Which is not, yes, in third place now, catching up to Russia in second place for a number of cases. Are you finally considering a travel ban from Brazil and Latin America?
We are considering it. We hope that we're not going to have a problem. The governor of Florida is doing very, very well testing, in particular Florida, because a big majority come into Florida. Brazil has gone more or less herd. You know what that is, herd. And they're having problems. By the way, when you say that we lead in cases, that's because we have more testing than anybody else. So we test much more than anybody else. Again, we're close to 14 million. It was said 12 and a half. It's actually, I think, close to 14 million now. And so we have 14 million tests. In Germany, if they do 2 million, that's a lot. And others are doing 1 million. So if you're testing 14 million people, you're going to find many more cases. Many of these people aren't very sick, but they still go down as a case. So actually, the number of cases, and we're also a much bigger country than most. So when we have a lot of cases, I don't look at that as a bad thing. I look at that as, in a certain respect, as being a good thing, because it means our testing is much better. So if we were testing 1 million people instead of 14 million people, we would have far fewer cases, right? So I view it as a badge of honor. Really, it's a badge of honor. It's a great tribute to the testing and all of the work that a lot of professionals have done. Okay?
Worried that they're going to bring their
Oh,
cases
yeah, no,
in
I say, as to the first part of your question, yeah, sure. I worry about everything. I don't want people coming in here and affecting our people. I don't want people over there sick either. We're helping Brazil with ventilators. We're sending them ventilators, okay? They need ventilators. I'm sending them ventilators. We have so many thousands of them. We're sending them. We're sending a lot of people. No, Brazil is having some trouble. No question about it. Sweden, by the way, I've heard a lot about Sweden and the way they do it. Well, you have Norway, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, that little group of beautiful countries. Well, Sweden took a little different attitude, but Sweden has far more deaths than the other three. You know that, right? Do you know that? Yeah, a lot more death. Many times the deaths. But they did it a different way, and, I understand that too. And as Mike said very well before, there is death on both sides. There's death on both sides. There's death in staying in a shutdown also, and lots of other things. But there's also death. Okay.
See, in terms of travel between the United States and Europe, but lifting travel restrictions.
I'd love it to open up as soon as it can, but we have to make sure that we're doing well and they're doing well. And in many cases we are. But, we have a very big country. We have some areas that have done incredibly well. We have other areas where the results it's tougher. New York and New Jersey are tougher. People don't realize New Jersey is the most dense state. A lot of people don't realize that. The governor's a terrific person. He's very liberal, but that's okay. He's a very liberal guy, but we like him. He's a good man, and he's working very hard. But New Jersey is a very dense area, very, very dense. And I speak to Andrew a lot, Andrew Cuomo a lot. We're working very well together. And, those are the two spots that have really been very heavily hit. A big portion, a big percentage, I don't know what it is, it's a very big percentage, almost half of our deaths would be to those two. Now, at the same time, the numbers, even in those two places, are coming down. They're coming down very rapidly. And I put out yesterday a statement, numbers are coming down with the exception of very little, few exceptions. The numbers are coming down all over the United States very rapidly. Very rapidly. It's a beautiful thing to watch. But it's left behind serious death. And it shouldn't have happened. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.